He flaunted his Aston Martin, his Patek Philippe watch, and the 20-something model on his arm, all bought with the money he'd hidden during their divorce. He cornered his ex-wife Chloe in the lobby of a Michelin-star restaurant just to mock her second-hand car and her struggling online business. He wanted to make sure she knew he was winning. What he didn't know was that across town, a lawyer was drafting a letter that would inform Chloe of an inheritance so vast it would make his entire lavish lifestyle look like pocket change. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about how a single act of forgotten kindness can change everything, turning a forgotten ex-wife into one of the most powerful women in the country. The chill of the November evening in Boston was nothing compared to the icy dread that washed over Chloe Redmond the moment she saw him. It had been 2 years since the divorce, 2 years of meticulously rebuilding her life from the rubble Jared Adler had left behind. She had been on her way to a modest celebratory dinner with 2 friends, a small victory for her online artisanal flower business finally turning a profit. And now, standing under the gilded awning of Aurelia, the 3 Michelin-star restaurant they used to call their spot, was Jared. He wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a woman who couldn't have been older than 24, with legs that seemed to start at her collarbone and a cherry-red dress that cost more than Chloe's monthly rent. Madison Cole, a rising Instagram model Chloe had seen splashed across gossip blogs. Jared looked like he'd been sculpted from wealth itself. His bespoke Tom Ford suit clung perfectly to his gym-honed frame. On his wrist the subtle glint of a Patek Philippe Nautilus, a watch he'd always coveted but claimed they couldn't afford when they were married. He was laughing, a deep, booming sound that used to make Chloe feel safe. Now it just sounded predatory. Chloe tried to shrink back into the shadows, hoping to slip past unnoticed, but Jared's eyes, sharp and calculating as ever, found hers. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. He excused himself from his date and strode towards Chloe, his expensive leather shoes clicking menacingly on the marble floor. "Chloe." "Well, look at you," he began, his voice dripping with condescension. His eyes did a slow, deliberate scan of her outfit, a simple but elegant navy blue dress from a department store. A string of her grandmother's pearls her only accessory. "Still shopping off the rack, I see. Some things never change." Chloe's friends Anna and Beth tensed beside her. "Jared." "That's enough," Anna said, her voice firm. Jared ignored her, his focus entirely on his ex-wife. "I heard about your little project," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Petals and pots or something. How's that going? Making dozens of dollars a month, are we? I hope you're reporting it all on your taxes." The barb hit its mark. Chloe had poured her heart, soul, and meager savings into that business. It was her lifeline, the one thing that was truly hers. "It's doing well, thank you," she said, her voice tighter than she wanted. "Is it?" Jared's smile widened. He gestured back towards the curb where a valet was carefully polishing the fender of a midnight blue Aston Martin DB11. "Things are going pretty well for me, too. The private equity firm I joined after leaving the old company made me a junior partner. The buy-in was steep, but the returns—" He chuckled. "Let's just say I don't check price tags anymore." He was intentionally twisting the knife. He had started that firm with the capital he'd hidden offshore during their divorce proceedings. Money Chloe had helped him earn through years of supporting his career, hosting his clients, and managing their life so he could focus on work. The court had seen only a fraction of his true worth. "I have to go, Jared. My friends and I have a reservation," Chloe said, trying to move past him. He stepped in her way. "At Aurelia." "Don't be ridiculous. You can't afford a bottle of water here." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was loud enough for her friends to hear. "Look, Chloe, I'm not a monster. I feel bad for you, I really do. How's that 2015 Honda Civic holding up? Still getting you from A to B?" He pulled out a sleek carbon fiber wallet. "Here." He tried to press a few $100 bills into her hand. "Go have a nice dinner somewhere else. On me." for old time's sake. The humiliation was a physical force, hot and suffocating. It wasn't just the money, it was the performance. He was doing this for Madison, who was watching with a smug, bored expression. He was doing this for the doorman. He was doing this to reinforce the narrative he had built, that he was the winner and she was the loser. Chloe's hand trembled as she pushed his away. The money fluttered to the ground. "I don't want your money, Jared. I never did. I just wanted a partner. A husband, not a competitor." His face hardened, the faux pity vanishing, replaced by the cold anger she knew so well. "You were holding me back, Chloe. You were an anchor. Look at me now. Look at you. The proof is right here." He turned his back on her, sauntering back to his date, who rewarded him with a kiss. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, the crisp $100 bills lying at her feet like an insult. The doorman averted his eyes, pretending not to see. Anna quietly picked up the money and tucked it into Chloe's purse. "Let's go," Beth whispered, gently steering a shell-shocked Chloe away from the restaurant. "We'll go to Giovanni's. It's better anyway." As they walked away, Chloe didn't dare look back. The image of Jared's smug face, the glint of his watch, and the sleek lines of his car were burned into her mind. Later that night, sitting in her small apartment, the celebratory mood long gone, she finally let the tears fall. She felt utterly and completely defeated. She had no idea that hundreds of miles away in a quiet, wood-paneled office, a chain of events had just been set in motion by a man she had never even met. A man who was about to hand her the power to shatter Jared's world. The week following the encounter at Aurelia was a blur of forced cheerfulness and gnawing self-doubt. Chloe threw herself into her work, arranging bouquets of winter roses and rare hellebores, until her fingers were raw, the sweet scent of the flowers a stark contrast to the bitterness in her heart. Jared's words echoed in her mind. You were an anchor. Was he right? Had she been the dead weight in their marriage? Her small two-bedroom apartment felt less like a cozy sanctuary and more like a cage of mediocrity. The profit she'd been so proud of now seemed pathetic. It was on a dreary Thursday afternoon that the letter arrived. It stood out from the usual stack of bills and junk mail like a relic from another era. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of a creamy textured cardstock that felt expensive to the touch. There was no stamp, only a neat postmark indicating it had been delivered by a private courier. Her name and address were handwritten in an elegant looping script. In the top left corner, embossed in a deep navy blue, were the words Chen and Associates Attorneys at Law, with an address on Park Avenue, New York City. Chloe's stomach twisted into a knot. A New York law firm. Her first thought was that Jared was suing her, perhaps for slander, or maybe he'd found some forgotten marital asset he wanted to claim. He was certainly vindictive enough. With trembling hands, she tore it open. The letter inside was on matching paper, the text crisp and formal. Dear Ms. Chloe Redmond, this letter serves as a formal request for your presence at our offices located at 230 Park Avenue, New York, NY at your earliest possible convenience. We are acting as the executors of the estate of our late client, Mr. Arthur Pemberton. The matter we wish to discuss is of the utmost importance and confidentiality, pertaining directly to Mr. Pemberton's final will and testament. Please contact my assistant, Ms. Albright, at the number provided below to arrange a meeting. We will, of course, cover all travel and accommodation expenses. Sincerely, David Chen, Senior Partner, Chen and Associates. Chloe read the letter 3 times. Arthur Pemberton. The name meant nothing to her. She searched her memory, scrolling through years of acquaintances, clients, and distant relatives. Nothing. It had to be a mistake. They must have the wrong Chloe Redmond. Her second thought was that it was a scam. A very elaborate, very sophisticated phishing attempt. But why would a scammer offer to fly her to New York and put her up in a hotel? Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, she decided to do some research. She booted up her old laptop and typed Chen and Associates into the search bar. The firm was real. and it was one of the most prestigious estate planning firms in the country, specializing in ultra-high net worth individuals. Their client list was rumored to include tech billionaires, old money dynasties, and international financiers. Next, she searched for Arthur Pemberton. The results were sparse, but what she found was staggering. Arthur Pemberton was a reclusive, legendary figure in the world of technology and engineering. He was the founder of Pemberton Industries, a privately held behemoth that had pioneered innovations in renewable energy, battery technology, and advanced materials. The few articles she found described him as an eccentric genius, a man who hadn't been photographed in public for over 30 years. There was a single grainy black-and-white photo from the 1970s of a young man with intense eyes and unruly hair. An obituary dated 2 weeks prior confirmed he had passed away at the age of 88, leaving no known children or immediate family. His net worth was estimated by financial magazines to be in the tens of billions. This only deepened the mystery. What could a man like that possibly have to do with her, a small business owner in Boston who drove a 10-year-old Honda? She called her friend Anna, her voice shaking as she read the letter aloud. "Chloe, this is insane," Anna said. "It sounds like something out of a movie." "What if it's real?" "It can't be," Chloe insisted. "I've never met this man. I've never even heard of him. It's a mistake." "There's only one way to find out," Anna urged. "Call them. What have you got to lose? They're paying for the trip. At worst, it's a weird mix-up and you get a free trip to New York. At best. Well, who knows?" Summoning every ounce of her courage, Chloe dialed the number on the letterhead. A calm, professional voice answered. "Chen and Associates, Ms. Albright speaking." "Hello, my name is Chloe Redmond," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "I received a letter from a Mr. David Chen." There was no surprise or confusion in the woman's voice. "Ah, yes, Ms. Redmond. We've been expecting your call. Mr. Chen has cleared his schedule for you. When would be a good time for you to travel to New York? We can have a car sent to you in Boston tomorrow morning and a suite booked at the St. Regis." The seamless efficiency of it all was disarming. This wasn't a mistake. They knew exactly who she was. Chloe, feeling as though she were moving through a dream, agreed to a meeting 2 days later. After she hung up, she sat in stunned silence. The world around her, the half-finished floral arrangements, the stack of unpaid invoices, the faint scent of wilted leaves seemed to fade into the background. For the first time since she saw Jared at the restaurant, a new feeling began to bloom in her chest, pushing aside the humiliation and despair. It was a terrifying, exhilarating flicker of hope. She had no idea what was waiting for her in New York, but she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that her life was about to change forever. The Lincoln town car that arrived outside her modest apartment building was so black it seemed to absorb the morning light. The driver, a stoic man in a crisp suit, held the door for her as if she were royalty. The 2-hour journey to New York was a silent, surreal glide down the highway. Chloe stared out the window, the familiar New England landscape blurring past, feeling a profound sense of dislocation, as if she were watching a movie of someone else's life. The offices of Chen and Associates were on the 40th floor of the MetLife building with a panoramic view of the city that made Chloe feel dizzy. The reception area was a study in understated power slate. Gray walls, a single dramatic orchid on a teak table, in the hushed, reverent silence of serious money. Ms. Albright, an impeccably dressed woman in her 50s, greeted her by name and led her down a long hallway to a corner office. David Chen rose from behind a vast mahogany desk as she entered. He was a man in his late 60s with kind eyes, a perfectly tailored gray suit, and an air of quiet authority. "Ms. Redmond, thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, shaking her hand warmly. His grip was firm and reassuring. "Please have a seat. Can I get you some tea, coffee, water?" Chloe, feeling completely out of her depth, simply asked for water. As he poured it for her from a crystal carafe, she took in the office. It was filled with books, legal tomes mixed with classics of literature and philosophy. There were no flashy displays of wealth, only quality and substance. Mr. Chen, she began, her voice trembling slightly, I have to tell you, I think there's been a terrible mistake. I don't know anyone named Arthur Pemberton. David Chen smiled gently. He sat down opposite her in a plush leather armchair. I assure you, Ms. Redmond, there is no mistake. Arthur knew who you were, though I suspect you would have no reason to remember him. He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. Ms. Redmond, Arthur Pemberton passed away 2 weeks ago. I was his lawyer, his executor, and I'm honored to say his friend for over 40 years. He was a very private man. He had no living family, and in his last will and testament, which I have right here, he gestured to a thick leather-bound document on his desk. He named you as the sole beneficiary of his entire estate. Chloe stared at him, uncomprehending. The words hung in the air, seeming to have no meaning. Sole beneficiary of his whole estate. Yes. But I read online. They said he was worth billions. The initial valuations are still underway, but yes, Mr. Chen said calmly. The liquid assets, stock portfolio, and real estate holdings of the Pemberton estate are valued at approximately $4.7 billion. This does not include Pemberton Industries itself, which is a privately held entity and valued considerably higher. The room began to spin. Chloe gripped the arms of her chair to steady herself. $4.7 billion. The number was so immense it was abstract, nonsensical. It was more money than she could possibly conceive of. Why, she finally whispered the word, catching in her throat. Why me? It makes no sense. Mr. Chen opened a folder on his lap. Arthur was a man who valued character above all else. He believed that small, unseen acts of kindness were the truest measure of a person. He instructed me to share a story with you, a memory he cherished. He began to read from a typed page. 5 years ago, on a Tuesday in October, there was a torrential downpour in Boston. An old man, frail and stubborn, had insisted on walking to the grocery store himself. On his way home, the paper bag soaked through and his groceries spilled all over the sidewalk. Cars splashed by, people hurried past under their umbrellas, ignoring him. The old man, soaked and shivering, was about to give up when a young woman pulled her car over. She got out in the rain without a coat and helped him gather every last item. She then insisted on driving him home, her car seats getting soaked. She helped him carry his groceries up 3 flights of stairs to his small, unassuming apartment. The old man, who looked like he didn't have 2 pennies to his name, offered her the $20 in his wallet. The young woman refused, simply saying, "Please just have a warm cup of tea and stay safe." She then left, never knowing who he was. Chloe's mind flashed back. She remembered it now. A rainy day, an old man with kind, tired eyes, a small, cluttered apartment that smelled of old books and Earl Grey tea. It was an insignificant event, an act of common decency she had performed and forgotten within the hour. "That was you, wasn't it, Ms. Redmond?" Mr. Chen asked softly. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. "Yes, I remember him. I had no idea. That old man was Arthur Pemberton." Chen finished. "He had a small apartment in Boston he used as a private refuge, a place no one knew about. He said in all his years, surrounded by people who wanted his money and his power, you were one of the only people who had ever shown him genuine, unprompted kindness with absolutely nothing to gain. He started following your life from a distance. He knew about your marriage to Jared Adler. He knew about the difficult divorce. He saw your resilience as you started your own business from scratch. He saw in you the integrity and strength he valued above all else." Chloe was speechless, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotion. This reclusive billionaire had been a silent observer of her life. "The inheritance is yours, Chloe," Mr. Chen said, using her first name for the first time. "The houses, the investments, the charitable foundation he established in your name. It's all yours." He paused, his expression becoming more complex. "However, there is one significant condition attached to the most valuable asset of all Pemberton Industries. A condition, yes. Arthur was a brilliant man, but he also held a grudge. His greatest business rival for decades was a man named Augustus Kane, the founder of Kane Global Enterprises. Arthur believed Kane was a ruthless, unethical man who prioritized profit over people. He spent years developing a revolutionary technology, a new form of decentralized sustainable energy grid he called Project Nightingale. It was his life's work, something he believed could change the world. He was months away from launching it when he fell ill. Mr. Chen looked her directly in the eyes. To inherit control of Pemberton Industries, you must personally oversee the successful launch of Project Nightingale within 1 year. And you must do so while fending off his rival. Augustus Kane is the primary investor and chairman of the board at the private equity firm where your ex-husband Jared Adler is now a partner. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening thud. This wasn't just a gift. It was a posthumous act of war, and Arthur Pemberton had just chosen her as his general. He was giving her not only the money to be free from Jared, but the weapon to destroy his entire world. The days that followed the meeting with David Chen were a disorienting whirlwind. Chloe felt like a diver who had surfaced too quickly, the world around her warped and unreal. One moment she was worrying about a $500 invoice for Dutch tulips. The next she was sitting in a bank boardroom with stern-faced financial advisors who used terms like asset allocation, trust structures, and diversified portfolios. The initial transfer of liquid assets to an account in her name was a string of numbers on a screen so long it looked like a programming error. Her small apartment, once a symbol of her independence, now felt claustrophobic and absurd. Mr. Chen's team had arranged for her to move into one of Arthur's properties for security reasons, a magnificent penthouse on Commonwealth Avenue overlooking the public garden. It was a world of polished marble floor-to-ceiling windows and silent, efficient staff. Chloe would often wake up in the middle of the night in the enormous king-size bed, her heart pounding, convinced it was all an elaborate dream. But it was the second part of her inheritance that truly consumed her, the challenge. Pemberton Industries. David Chen had hand-delivered a personal letter from Arthur written on his deathbed. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were forged in steel. Chloe, it began. If you are reading this, then I have passed on, and David has followed my instructions. I apologize for thrusting this upon you, but I do not believe in chance. The universe put you in my path on that rainy day, and I saw in you a strength you may not yet see in yourself. I am leaving you my company, not as a burden, but as a tool. Kane Global and the vultures who flock to it like your ex-husband represent everything I despise: greed without vision, ambition without soul. They would steal my technology, bastardize it for short-term profit, and crush the very spirit of innovation it represents. Project Nightingale is more than a product. It's a legacy. It is the culmination of my life's work. I am not asking you to be an engineer or a scientist. The teams I have in place are the best in the world. I am asking you to be its guardian. I am asking you to lead. Your kindness is not a weakness, as men like your ex-husband believe. It is your sharpest weapon. Do not let them win. Honor the spirit of the project, see it through, and the company and its future will be yours unconditionally. The letter settled something deep inside her. The fear began to recede, replaced by a nascent steely resolve. This was her purpose. Arthur hadn't just given her an escape. He'd given her a mission. Her first day at the Pemberton Industries headquarters, a sprawling state-of-the-art campus of glass and steel just outside Boston, was terrifying. She traded her familiar jeans and sweaters for a tailored power suit selected by a personal stylist. As she walked through the atrium, a massive space with a living wall of green plants, she could feel the eyes of hundreds of employees on her. The whispers followed her. Who is she? Where did she come from? The boardroom was even more intimidating. It was filled with the company's senior executives, mostly men in their 50s and 60s, who had been loyal to Arthur for decades. Their faces were a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and outright suspicion. The COO, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Barbara Vance, did not hide her apprehension. Ms. Redmond, Barbara began, her voice crisp. With all due respect, Mr. Pemberton was a singular genius. This company is a complex, multi-billion-dollar operation. Project Nightingale alone has over 1,000 moving parts. What qualifications do you possibly have to lead us? It was the question Chloe had been dreading, the one that echoed Jared's taunts. You were an anchor. You're not enough. Chloe took a deep breath, clutching the memory of Arthur's letter like a shield. She looked around the table, meeting each of their gazes. You're right, Ms. Vance, she said, her voice steady and clear. I am not a scientist. I am not an engineer. I can't tell you the difference between lithium-ion and solid-state batteries. My qualification is not on a resume. My qualification is that the man who built this entire company from the ground up, the genius you all respected, chose me. He didn't choose a seasoned CEO. He didn't choose a corporate raider. He chose me. He trusted me to be the guardian of his legacy, and I will not let him down. She leaned forward, her voice gaining strength. I'm not here to redesign your schematics. I'm here to empower you to do what you do best. My job is to protect this project, to provide you with every resource you need, and to fight the battles outside these walls so you can win the war inside them. Arthur Pemberton saw an enemy on the horizon in Kane Global and Jared Adler's firm. My single most important qualification is that I know that enemy better than any of you. A silence fell over the room. She had not been defensive. She had been direct. She had acknowledged her limitations but framed them as a unique strength. She saw a flicker of respect in Barbara Vance's eyes. It was a start. The transformation was grueling. Chloe spent the next few weeks in a crash course working 18-hour days. She devoured briefing documents, financial reports, and technical summaries of Project Nightingale. She held one-on-one meetings with every department head, not pretending to understand their work, but asking them what they needed, what obstacles they faced, and who their best people were. She listened more than she talked. Slowly, she began to see the shape of the battlefield. Kane Global was already making moves, trying to poach key engineers and filing frivolous patent disputes to slow them down. Jared's firm was providing the financial muscle and the aggressive strategy. They were circling, waiting for the leaderless Pemberton Industries to falter. Chloe knew a quiet defense wouldn't be enough. Arthur wanted her to fight. She needed to make a move, something bold and decisive that would announce to the world and to Jared that Pemberton Industries was not adrift. It was under new and formidable command. For weeks, the financial world had been buzzing with rumors. The death of the reclusive Arthur Pemberton had left a massive power vacuum. Pemberton Industries, long a sleeping giant, was suddenly in play. Vultures like Augustus Kane circled, waiting for the estate to be carved up or for the company to be sold for parts. The identity of Pemberton's heir was the biggest mystery on Wall Street, a closely guarded secret by David Chin. Jared Adler followed the news with ravenous interest. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. With Kane's backing his firm, Apex Capital was preparing a hostile takeover bid. The crown jewel they were after was Pemberton's patent portfolio, especially the whispers of a game-changing energy project. The company is rudderless, Jared announced at an Apex Partners meeting, radiating confidence. He paced in front of a glass wall overlooking the Boston Harbor. Whoever the heir is, it's probably some distant, clueless relative who will take the first 9-figure check we slide across the table. We'll absorb their tech, fire half their staff, and triple our valuation inside of 2 years. Madison, who was waiting for him in his office, was less interested in the details and more in the results. So, does this mean we can finally close on the house in the Hamptons? She asked, scrolling through her phone. Baby, after this deal, we can buy the whole damn Hamptons, Jared boasted, kissing her. He felt invincible. His invincibility lasted until the following Monday morning. He was sipping an espresso and scanning the Wall Street Journal when a headline made him choke. Pemberton Industries stuns market with $500 million acquisition of Cobalt X exclusive supplier of ethically sourced cobalt. Jared's heart hammered against his ribs. Cobalt X was a crucial mining and refining company in the battery supply chain. Apex Capital had been in quiet, aggressive negotiations to acquire them for months. It was a linchpin of their strategy to control the resources needed for next-generation batteries, effectively kneecapping any competitor like Pemberton. Someone had outmaneuvered them, paying a 30% premium in an all-cash deal that had materialized over a single weekend. Someone had stolen their prize right from under their noses. Furious, he stormed into his office and got Augustus Kane on the phone. "Who the hell is running Pemberton?" Jared yelled. "Who is this new heir? We need a name. We're working on it." Kane's gravelly voice rasped from the speaker. "My sources say the board was just as surprised. This move was orchestrated entirely by the new owner. They're being very quiet." The mystery only fueled the market's excitement. The acquisition was seen as a brilliant, aggressive move, signaling that Pemberton Industries was not for sale. It was on the offensive. For Chloe, the decision had been a terrifying gamble. It was her first major act as the new head of the company. Barbara Vance and the finance team had advised against it, calling it an overpay. "It's not just about the cobalt, Barbara," Chloe had argued in a late-night strategy session. "It's about the message. We're drawing a line in the sand. We're telling Kane and we're telling my ex-husband that the days of Pemberton Industries being a passive player are over. We will not be hunted. We are the hunters now." She had authorized the deal, her hand shaking, as she signed the documents that committed $500 million. 2 days later, she decided it was time to step out of the shadows. Pemberton Industries issued a formal press release officially announcing its new chairman and CEO. The news broke across every major financial news network. Jared was in a meeting when his phone began vibrating incessantly. He ignored it until his partner burst into the room, his face pale. "Jared, you need to see this." He handed Jared his tablet. On the screen was an article from Forbes. The headline read, "The Mysterious Heir, Chloe Redmond Takes the Helm at Pemberton Industries, Signals Aggressive New Direction." Beneath the headline was a picture of Chloe. It wasn't the timid, heartbroken woman he had last seen. This was a photo taken by a professional. She was standing in the atrium of the Pemberton headquarters dressed in a sharp navy blue suit. Her hair was styled, her makeup was flawless, but it was her eyes that made Jared's blood run cold. They were filled with a calm, unyielding fire he had never seen before. He read her official statement. "I am honored to carry on Arthur Pemberton's legacy of innovation and integrity. Pemberton Industries will be investing heavily in the future, starting with the imminent launch of Project Nightingale, a technology that will reshape the global energy landscape. We welcome the competition." Jared felt the air leave his lungs. It was impossible. A prank. A nightmare. Chloe. His Chloe. The woman who organized charity bake sales and arranged flowers, running a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. He stumbled out of the meeting, his mind reeling. He got in his car and drove fast and reckless to the Pemberton headquarters. He didn't have a plan. He was fueled by pure, unadulterated rage and disbelief. He found her just as she was leaving for the day, stepping out of the main entrance and walking toward a waiting black Maybach, a car that made his Aston Martin look like a toy. "Chloe!" he yelled, his voice raw. She turned, her expression unreadable. She didn't look surprised to see him. She simply waited. "What is this?" he sputtered, gesturing wildly. "What kind of game are you playing? Did you win the lottery? Who are you sleeping with?" Chloe looked at him, not with the hurt or anger he expected, but with something that looked almost like pity. "It's no game, Jared," she said, her voice cool and even. "This is my company now. This is my life." "Your company? You couldn't even balance our checkbook," he scoffed, his voice dripping with the old, familiar venom. "Who is Pemberton? How did you pull this off?" "He was a man who appreciated kindness," Chloe said simply. "Something you wouldn't understand. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board dinner to attend." She turned to get into her car. Jared, desperate and furious, grabbed her arm. "You think you can just waltz in and play CEO? You think you can go up against me and Augustus Kane? We will crush you. We will bury you in this entire company." Chloe slowly turned her head, her eyes locking onto his hand on her arm. She didn't flinch. She just stared at it until he, unnerved by her utter lack of fear, let go. "You know Jared?" she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "For the longest time I believed you when you said I was an anchor. But I've come to realize something. I wasn't the anchor. I was the harbor. I was the safe place you came back to while you were building your little pirate ship. The thing is, the harbor is stationary. It's safe. But a ship without a harbor, sooner or later, it gets lost in a storm." Without another word, she slipped into the back seat of the Maybach. The door closed with a solid, definitive thud, and the car pulled away, leaving Jared standing alone in the parking lot, choking on the dust of his own shattered reality. The war had begun. The battle between Pemberton Industries and the Apex Kane Alliance escalated into a full-blown corporate war. It was fought not with armies, but with algorithms, lawyers, and public relations firms. Jared, fueled by a toxic cocktail of wounded pride and avarice, came at Chloe with everything he had. He launched a smear campaign in the financial press, feeding anonymous sources to reporters who wrote scathing articles questioning Chloe's competence. They painted her as an unqualified heiress, a lucky fool in over her head, and predicted the imminent collapse of Pemberton Industries under her naive leadership. He hired away 2 of Pemberton's mid-level engineers, hoping to gain insider knowledge about Project Nightingale. He filed a dozen frivolous lawsuits challenging old patents and supply contracts designed to bleed Chloe's company of time and money. But he underestimated her. And he drastically underestimated the loyalty Arthur Pemberton had inspired. The core team at Pemberton, now fiercely protective of Chloe, rallied around her. Barbara Vance, the once skeptical COO, became her most trusted lieutenant, working tirelessly to counter Jared's moves. They fought the lawsuits, shored up employee morale, and under Chloe's direction accelerated the timeline for Project Nightingale. Chloe proved to be a natural leader, not because she was a technical expert, but because she understood people. She remembered the names of the security guards, ate lunch in the main cafeteria, and listened to the concerns of the junior programmers. She fostered a culture of collaborative innovation that stood in stark contrast to the cutthroat environment at Apex Capital. Despite their strong defense, the pressure was immense. Kane Global had deep pockets, and Jared's aggression was relentless. He seemed to anticipate some of their moves as if he had a source inside their walls. A key supplier negotiation would suddenly fall through. A strategic partner would back out at the last minute for a better offer from Apex. Chloe and Barbara began to suspect a leak. The stress was taking a toll on Jared, too. His obsession with destroying Chloe became all-consuming. He was constantly on the phone, barking at lawyers, traders, and his new fiancée. The carefree, triumphant man Madison Cole had attached herself to was being replaced by a paranoid, angry workaholic. The shopping sprees became less frequent, the romantic dinners non-existent. Their luxury lifestyle, which she had considered a permanent state, now felt precarious, tied entirely to this vindictive war against his ex-wife. Madison was no fool. She had chosen Jared for his success, for the security and status he provided. She watched him pour millions of Apex's and by extension Kane's money into this personal vendetta with diminishing returns. She also watched Chloe. She saw her on the cover of Wired magazine, profiled as a new titan of tech. She saw paparazzi shots of her leaving charity galas looking poised and powerful. She saw the Pemberton Industries stock, which had been listed on a private exchange, steadily climbing. Madison did the math. Jared was fighting a war against a woman who had more money, more public goodwill, and a revolutionary product. He was losing. And if he lost, she lost. The Birkin bags, the apartment on Beacon Hill, the promise of a house in the Hamptons, it would all evaporate. Self-preservation. Her sharpest instinct kicked in. One evening, Chloe was working late with Barbara and her head of security, a former FBI agent named Frank. They were trying to find the source of the leak. "It has to be someone at the executive level," Frank said, pointing to a diagram of their internal communications. "The information he's getting is too specific." Just then, Chloe's personal assistant buzzed her. "Ma'am, you have an anonymous call on your private line. The person refuses to give a name but says it's about Apex Capital. Chloe hesitated, then nodded. Put it through. She put the phone on speaker. A woman's voice, digitally disguised but recognizably female, came through the line. Is this Chloe Redmond? It is. Who is this? Let's just say I'm a concerned party. I have information about Apex Capital's strategy regarding Project Nightingale. They found a potential vulnerability in your supply chain, a microchip manufacturer in Taiwan. They're planning a corporate raid next week to acquire a controlling interest and cut you off completely. Chloe, Barbara, and Frank stared at each other in stunned silence. This was the exact move they had been wargaming as Jared's most devastating potential attack. Why are you telling me this? Chloe asked, her mind racing. Jared Adler is reckless, the voice said, a hint of genuine anger seeping through the digital filter. He's going to run that company and my investment into the ground with this stupid obsession. I prefer to back the winning horse. There's a data file being sent to you now through an encrypted channel. It has everything. Apex's internal memos, their offer sheet for the manufacturer, everything. Use it well. The line went dead. A moment later, a file appeared on Chloe's laptop. Frank immediately set to work verifying its authenticity and scrubbing it for malware. It's real, he announced 20 minutes later, his eyes wide. My God, this is their entire playbook for the next 6 months. Barbara looked at Chloe. This changes everything. We can preempt every move they make. We can set traps. We can crush them. Chloe felt a chill. She knew with absolute certainty who the anonymous caller was. The reference to my investment was the tell. Madison wasn't invested in Apex Capital. She was invested in the lifestyle it provided. She had seen the writing on the wall and had decided to switch her allegiance to the new nexus of power. She was betraying Jared to secure her own future. It was a ruthless, cynical move, and it was the most powerful weapon Chloe had been handed yet. She looked at the files on her screen, a ghost in Jared's machine sent by the woman who was sleeping in his bed. All right, Chloe said, a hard edge to her voice. Let's get to work. It's time to stop playing defense. Armed with Madison's intel, Chloe and her team didn't just counter Jared's attacks. They turned them into traps. When Apex's raiders went to Taiwan to buy the microchip company, they found that Pemberton Industries had already acquired it 2 days prior using an offshore shell corporation. When Jared tried to poach their head of marketing, he discovered the man had already signed a new ironclad contract with a bonus that dwarfed Apex's offer, a negotiation prompted by Chloe's foreknowledge. For every punch Jared threw, Chloe was already there holding a granite wall. His frustration grew into paranoia. He accused his partners of incompetence, his lawyers of ineptitude. He couldn't understand how she was always one step ahead. The atmosphere at Apex Capital grew toxic, and investors, including the notoriously impatient Augustus Kane, began to get nervous. The culmination of it all was the launch of Project Nightingale. Chloe orchestrated an event that was part tech conference, part World Fair. She invited scientists, government officials, and press from all over the globe to the Pemberton campus. The centerpiece of the presentation was a live demonstration, a miniature self-sustaining town on the campus grounds, powered entirely and independently by the Nightingale grid. It was a stunning, undeniable success. As the news went viral, Pemberton's private valuation skyrocketed. Governments and multinational corporations immediately began inquiries about licensing the technology. Project Nightingale wasn't just a product, it was a paradigm shift. Chloe, standing on the stage delivering a speech about a future of clean, accessible energy for all, was no longer just an heiress. She was a visionary. For Jared, the news was a death knell. As Pemberton's star ascended, Apex's plummeted. Their investors saw that they had bet on the wrong horse in the energy race. Augustus Kane, in a brutal, decisive move, called an emergency board meeting. He personally orchestrated the vote to remove Jared as partner, citing his reckless and value-destroying vendetta. He was forced to sell his shares at a catastrophic loss to cover the firm's debts. Within 48 hours, Jared Adler was ruined. He lost his job, his partnership, and the vast majority of his wealth. The creditors came for the Aston Martin first. Then came the notice of foreclosure on his penthouse. The final betrayal came from Madison. The moment the news of Jared's ousting broke, she packed her bags, the expensive ones he'd bought for her, and left. She sent him a simple text. "Sorry, Jared. I can't do this. I wish you the best." She was already in talks with a divorce lawyer to see what she could get from their brief engagement. Broken, humiliated, and alone, Jared did the one thing he could think of. He drove his rented sedan to the one place he knew he could find Chloe, her old apartment. He didn't know why he went there, but it was the only place that felt real. He found her there packing up the last of her personal belongings into boxes. She had kept the apartment, using it as a quiet place to think. She saw him through the window, and after a moment's hesitation, let him in. He was a ghost of the man who had mocked her at Aurelia. His expensive suit was rumpled. His face was pale, and the arrogant fire in his eyes had been extinguished, replaced by a desperate, hollow look. "They're gone, Chloe," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Everything. The firm, the money. Madison. It's all gone." Chloe continued placing books into a box, her movements calm and deliberate. "I'm sorry to hear that, Jared." "Sorry?" He let out a harsh, broken laugh. "You did this. You planned this all along, didn't you? This elaborate revenge fantasy?" Chloe finally stopped and looked at him. "No, Jared, you did this. This was never about revenge for me. This was about survival. It was about building something, not tearing someone down. You were just an obstacle my benefactor wanted cleared from the path." Desperation made him change tactics. He softened his voice, trying to conjure the ghost of the man she had once loved. "Chloe, remember us. Remember what we had. It was real. I was stupid. I was arrogant. I lost my way. But I never stopped loving you." He took a step towards her, his hands outstretched. "We can start again. You have everything. We could have everything." It was the most pathetic, transparent plea she had ever heard, and she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. Just a profound sense of distance, as if she were looking at a stranger. "The best thing you ever did for me, Jared, was leaving me," she said, her voice soft but final. "You thought you were setting yourself free, but you were setting me free. Free to discover what I was capable of without you telling me I was worthless." She paused, then delivered the final quiet blow. "By the way, you should know that your biggest leak wasn't in your company. It was in your bedroom. Madison was my anonymous source for the last 6 months. She knew you were sinking the ship, and she just wanted a new lifeboat." The last vestiges of color drained from Jared's face. The knowledge that he had been betrayed by both the woman he left and the woman he chose completely shattered him. Chloe picked up a box labeled Memories. She walked to the door and held it open. "Goodbye, Jared. I hope you find your way, but my harbor is closed for good." He stumbled out into the hallway, a broken man with nothing left but the consequences of his own cruelty. Chloe closed the door, leaning against it for a long moment. She didn't feel a surge of victory. She simply felt free. The storm had passed. Her journey hadn't been about a billionaire's inheritance or corporate warfare. It had been about finding the person she was meant to be, a person who had been there all along, just waiting for the anchor to be lifted. And as she looked around the small apartment where her new life had begun, she smiled. It was time to go build the future. And that's where Chloe's story truly begins. Not with the signing of a check, but with the closing of a door on her past. It's a powerful reminder that our worth is never defined by the people who leave us, but by the strength we find within ourselves when we're forced to stand alone. Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness we perform are for strangers, and we never know how or when that compassion will come back to us, often in the most unexpected and life-altering ways. Jared thought wealth was about what you could buy, But Chloe learned it was about what you could build. What did you think of Chloe's journey? Was Jared's downfall deserved, or was Madison the true villain of the story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of vindication and empowerment, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening.